Each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction and right, which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated to the United States, in Congress assembled.
We have declared independence from Great Britain to escape her chains that bind us from freedom from her centralized power and authority. However, our hopes of sovereignty within each state is leading us to a more terrible decay. What should have established a firm league of friendship among states has caused a separation of currency and government. George Washington also argues on such behalf.
Today we are one nation and 13 tomorrow. Who will treat us on such terms?
The Constitution offers an alternative to this conundrum. Section 6 of Article 1 promotes the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. United we stand, however, without the proper structure of power, divided we will fall. The Articles of Confederation lacks the power to levy what we must need to fund this nation: taxes. War is the parent of armies, and from these bring birth to taxes and debt. America still owes money to those nations who have helped and aided us in our great revolution for independence, and still requires money to grow into a respectable nation to ensure that our allies did not help us in vain.
Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states.
Establishing this government requires the contribution of everyone and the ratification of this Constitution so that our hopes may be more than just words. Murder, embezzlement, treason. Some actions can be judged fairly reasonably by morality. Attempted murder for revenge, embezzlement for the welfare of a family, and treason for individual rights. How do we judge and execute a fitting punishment? Who has the right to declare these punishments? Where do we establish these laws of rules and regulations? The answer is nowhere and no one. With the current government under the Articles of Confederation, we do not have a federal court system. Ratifying the Constitution ensures the judicial power extending to all cases, as outlined in Section 2.1 of Article 3.
The principle of the Constitution is that of a separation of legislative, executive and judiciary functions. If this principle be not expressed in direct terms, it is clearly the spirit of the Constitution, and it ought to be so commented and acted on by every friend of free government.
Our forefathers pilgrimaged to this new world in hopes of traveling outside the oppressing reach of Her Majesty. We declared independence to breathe the air of freedom we so long to have. And yet, today, are we not nurturing another dictatorship by our reluctance to ratify the Constitution to end a unicameral executive power as we drag our feet along the Articles of Confederation, which promotes the government's rules by the delegates as outlined in Article 10? The Constitution will allow a separation of checks and balances to ensure that we do not return to where we started.
In determining questions in the United States, in Congress assembled, each state shall have one vote.
The Articles of Confederation not only deprives the opinion of the people, it limits those decisions to the delegates.
If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, it is the responsibility of the government to ensure the voice of the majority as well as to hear the voices of the minority.
It is the responsibility of the government to ensure the voice of the majority as well as to hear the voices of the minority. The Constitution proposes a plan by which Congress, divided into two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, will incorporate a balance between the equality of all states and the vote of the population.